Okay, so the worldview of every thinking person, worldview is the way that you see and interpret the world, can probably be summed up in two major boxes. And so I'm going to ask you to imagine this morning that I've got a whiteboard behind me. I don't, but you might want to take notes on this. I'm going to try to make this as clear as I can. But there's two main ways that people see the world, right? So on this side of the whiteboard, I'm going to write up the word supernaturalism. Supernaturalism on this side of the board. That's one way that most people see the world. Now, I'm a supernaturalist. You probably are too. Gospel Fellowship is. The PCA is a supernaturalist denomination. Here's what I mean by that. We fundamentally have a position of belief. We believe in God. We are theists. Okay? The word supernatural means greater than nature. And so we believe as supernaturalists that there's more than just the natural world that we see all around us, right? So that's fundamentally our starting place. We are believers. We are supernaturalists. Now, on this side of the board, I'm going to write up the word materialist. And a materialist viewpoint is exactly the opposite of that. It believes that essentially all that there is really what you see in front of you, the molecules, the atoms. It comes from the name matter. So materialist is one who believes primarily that there's just stuff, matter, right? And those are the two main worldviews that most people are going to fall into each of these categories. So back over here, we're supernaturalists, at least I am, hopefully you are too, because our starting place for all that we believe is God. We believe in God, and not just any God, but a great, majestic, powerful, beautiful, glorious God. And so assuming that that's true, then I don't have any problem then to follow that logically and to also assume that God created the world. So I'm a creationist too. And not only that, but I have no problem then, because I start from the position that there is a God, and also affirming things like miracles, that every once in a while, might be very rare, but God actually breaks through some of the natural laws of the way this universe holds together, and he does things that would seem to defy the laws in the universe that he himself has set up. So I have no problem asserting that because I'm a theist, I'm a supernaturalist. And more than that, I have no problem affirming that there are other beings besides ourselves, intelligent creatures like angels and demons. That all fits into my box over here, supernaturalism. And not only that, but I also conclude then that there is an afterlife, that there's more than just this life, that when we die, the soul goes on forever in one of two places, either heaven or in hell. And if that kind of sounds like your worldview, then you're up here, top left quadrant, supernaturalist. That's your view. Now again, to the materialist over here, they pretty much deny everything I just said, because all that they have is matter, right? How the matter came to be, never explained. Don't really even need an explanation for that. They just assume that what is, and most of that is just solid material stuff. Even the fact that you have a soul in your body would be debatable in this materialist camp. Certainly they would have no room for anything like resurrection from the dead, heaven, hell, angels, miracles. All of that is ruled out expressly in this box over here, box number 2, the materialistic view. Does that make sense so far? Because it's going to get a little bit more complicated. Okay, so you got two boxes, right? And then when we're reading Mark chapter 12, what happens is we meet a group of people that doesn't seem to fit in either box. And that's why I said most people's worldviews fit in one of these two boxes. But every once in a while, there's an anomaly. And the anomaly that we encounter in today's passage is a group of people, one of the main parties of the Jews that are called the Sadducees. Now, I'll just say a little bit about that, and then we're going to look at them here in the scriptures. You probably already know the Pharisees of the Jews. That would be the more conservative group. They would fit over here in the supernaturalistic box. They believe in God, they believe in angels, they believe in demons, they believe in the resurrection. The Pharisees are obvious supernaturalists, no question about that, even though we disagree with them on certain matters from time to time, of course, because Jesus runs into conflict with these people. But the Sadducees were a different group, and they were what you might consider to be the liberals of Judaism of that day. There's some other groups too. There's the Essenes out there kind of out in the wilderness, and you have your zealots trying to overthrow Rome, but primarily you've got two parties, the Pharisees, which are the supernaturalists, and then you see the Sadducees, but they're kind of weird, right? Because they deny certain things that you would think would go in this supernaturalistic box. So a Bible's open to Mark chapter 12, verse 18. It says, the Sadducees came to him who say there is no resurrection. Now that's an obvious bullet point under the supernaturalistic category, but they deny the resurrection. So where do you put them? Right? Now, if you want another interesting view of the Sadducees, and Mark only mentions the Sadducees this one time in his gospel. There's some other occasions in the gospels, but let's flip over, just for the sake of curiosity. Let's go over to the book of Acts chapter 23, when we're going to see their inconsistent supernaturalism come up at least one more time. This time in Acts chapter 23, Paul is on trial for his life. Okay? He's been arrested already. He's been charged. And he is now coming before the council, which would be the Sanhedrin, and Ananias, the high priest. And Paul is going to do a little maneuver here that's really very brilliant on Paul's part. Paul is going to say something that effectively splits the house of the Sanhedrin. So watch this. Acts chapter 23, verse 6. Now when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees, there's our group right there, and the other were Pharisees, he cried out in the council, brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of the Pharisees, and it is with respect to the hope of the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial. And when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For, verse 8, key verse here, for the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. You see the difference there in those two views? Okay? Verse 9, then a clamor arose, and some of the scribes and the Pharisees sharply stood up and contended, we find nothing wrong in this man, because they recognize, hey, he's a supernaturalist like we are. What if an angel or a spirit spoke to him? And so Paul, he plays the house rather well, divides them on a couple of viewpoints, and he ends up escaping to live another day. And that's a story of its own. So what do we see about the Sadducees, this strange group of Jews? Is that they should be in the supernaturalistic box because they affirm the existence of God, but then they get weird because they start denying certain things like the resurrection and angels and demons and other things like this. So now what we have to do, let's go back up to our whiteboard up here. So far we only had 2 boxes, but now I've got to make 2 more. So the chart gets complicated. Okay, so on the supernaturalistic side, we're now going to have 2 boxes on this side, supernaturalist and inconsistent supernaturalism down here. This is box 3. Consistent supernaturalism, but now we've got inconsistent supernaturalism. And that's the box that the Sadducees fall in, because while they affirm the existence of God, they deny some of the logical consequences that should follow from affirming the existence of the deity. Does that make sense so far? But so I've got one more box. What's my last box? Inconsistent materialism over here. Consistent materialism, they deny everything. But then you've got inconsistent materialists. And this is where it gets really weird, and hopefully you're not an inconsistent materialist, because the inconsistent materialists, well, they deny most things like the Bible, Scripture, Christ, God, His sovereignty. But the reason they're inconsistent materialists is because they'll let in weird things that make no sense. Like, for instance, they'll start talking about luck. Like, well, where does luck fall in a materialistic worldview? Well, they just kind of let it slide through the cracks. Or when something happens nationally, they'll say like, oh, we'll send thoughts and prayers. Well, what does that mean if you deny the existence of God? What is thoughts and prayers then? Right? Or they'll start talking about angelic visitors, which is really strange, because why would you have angels if you deny God? And so the inconsistent materialists, they're basically just those people that kind of follow superstition, and they have all kinds of weird variances in their worldview that are totally inconsistent with otherwise being a materialist. Now, I realize I've spent way too much time in my introduction this morning, but I felt like I needed to do that to kind of set the board for examining this passage. And it is going to make more sense when you view this group, the Sadducees, as what we might call inconsistent supernaturalists, which is obviously